Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Banish the Doubt. Tonight, I want to talk about a couple of things. First is understanding who we are on the inside is perfect. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about this from an ego standpoint as to like, well, I'm better than you. No, I'm perfect. Not vanity, anything like that. I'm talking about getting to that place in your life where you look in the mirror and you accept that person. The place in your life when you look in the mirror and you tell that person they are worthy, they are deserving of everything that this life has to offer. Getting to that place where we say, who I am on the inside at every single moment is perfect, is serene, is like water. Nothing sticks to it. Because truly, what I'm talking about is that source energy, that Christ consciousness that is inside each and every one of us, that just waits for this connection to take place in this life. So, what I'd like to start off with are some quotes. The first one is dissolving the mind is a matter of not doing. Dissolving this mind of ours, of this ego connection that this mind has, this almost like this grip on us. The ego has it. The ego doesn't want to let go. The ego doesn't like change. The ego does not want to be vulnerable. Okay? The ego wants you out there to change in order for the ego to feel better. The ego wants to compare to you, make sure that when we compare, in comparison is the joy, is the thief of joy. The ego wants to make sure that, I'm better than that person, or I look a bit better than that person, or act, or whatever it may be. Okay? So dissolving the mind is a matter of not doing. Simply avoid becoming attached, because that's what the ego wants to do, is wants to attach to what you see and think. This comes from the Hua Hu Ching. These are scripts or books or what have you, I don't know, writings from thousands of years ago. They've been around for thousands of years. But never heard of them. That was never required reading in school, right? Relinquish the notion that you are separated from the all knowing mind of the universe. So that Christ consciousness, that universal mind that's inside each and every one of us, we are a part of this. Okay? This is not only something that you are connected to, it is something that you are. So again, you are perfect on the inside. You are whole. You are perfect just as the entity that came into this world. Nothing has changed on that inside. This here, this acorn, okay? Inside this acorn, you've heard it said before, sleeps the giant oak. Sleeps inside that acorn. So inside that acorn, the energy that creates that giant oak is inside each and every one of you. Is inside of me. Okay? Any thoughts of separation is a complete and total illusion. Then recover your original pure insight and see through all of the illusions. The illusions that the Hua Hu Ching is talking about here is everything that we see outside, is everything that we think we have to attach to. It's the opinions of others. So I want to transition now to the book Letting Go and some quotes from the book from Dr. Hawkins. So let's not forget that we are letting go of all the programs that have made us a slave and a victim for a long time. These programs have blinded us to the truth of our real identity, who we are on the inside. The ego is losing ground. It will try tricks and bluffs. So by tricks and bluffs, that means we're going to hit circumstances or situations or stimulus that we're going to maybe find ourselves reacting. And these are the kind of things, these are bluffs. Okay. But if we act like we used to or have in the past, just understand that's just an opportunity for you to recognize that, okay, I'm not quite there yet. So a couple of months ago, my in laws were visiting. My mother in law is a beautiful soul. She is somebody who I really look at as one of my greatest teachers, because you'll find that in this life, as we go through it, the people who push our buttons the most are oftentimes our greatest teachers, because they're the ones, as our awareness starts to evolve and starts to expand, we start to understand that they can get under our skin, right? But those are the ones who are teaching us. As we start to expand our awareness, we start to recognize that these are the greatest teachers, because they're really showing us, they're like a mirror, mirroring back to us those parts of us that we need to correct. So, a situation took place, I overreacted, but I quickly realized I overreacted. In that moment, I went, George, okay, great teaching moment. Okay, so as we do this, okay, as we begin to let go, as we start to recognize that this is the ego inside of us having throwing a temper tantrum, if you will, we start to correct our mind. The rest of us, our life falls into place. So what I mean by this is we start to understand and start to separate ourselves from our addictions, the poison that's inside of us, that's in our mind, fear, uh, thoughts of doubt, insecurity, frustration, anger, all these things we start to recognize, and we start to pull ourselves away from that. We start to correct these things, in our life, as we mentioned here, starts to fall into place. So we go on. The ego wants to keep us enslaved by its programs. Okay. So one of the tricks the ego pulls is it to go unconscious about the technique itself. For instance, to decide suddenly that the mechanism of surrender isn't working. So we start to worry about, like, oh, the work I'm doing, it's not working yet. This is, I'm not really who I want to be yet when situations like this take place. Okay, things are still the same. It is confusing and too hard to remember to do. This is a sign of real progress. So when we're at that stage, when those little tricks and bluffs come up, understand this is when we recognize this. That is it's like I tell my son when he is practicing baseball in the batting cage and he swings and hits a foul ball or whatever misses. I always say to him, when he recognizes, hey, I didn't turn my hip the right way, or I turned my head too fast, whatever it may be, I said that is the sign of progress. That's the breakthrough. So we start to understand that we're living our life in that moment. When we recognize that, we also recognize I'm in the moment. I'm not out there. I'm not wanting them to change. I'm not making myself the victim by saying, oh, poor me, I haven't changed yet. We understand we're in the moment, and we always change in the moment. So another area of the book that I want to get to in a second, but I want to also show you guys something else as well. You probably can't see that. So who looks outside dreams. Whenever we look outside, we're dreaming. Not dreams as far as I have a dream, but we're in dreamland. When we look inside, we awaken. Because truly, guys, who we truly are, again, the mighty oak that sleeps inside this acorn, that's who we are on the inside. We start to awaken that. Okay, we start to get, essentially, when we're catching ourselves in the moment. That's almost like the taproot, that acorn I showed you. That's almost like the taproot of the mighty oak tree starting to take root. Through pride, we are ever deceiving ourselves, but deep below the surface of the average conscious, a still small voice, the mighty oak inside the acorn, says to us something is out of tune. So, through pride, ego, we are ever deceiving ourselves. So we know once we start to awaken, once we start to become more aware of ourselves and our life, that voice inside, that still small voice inside, start to say something's just doesn't feel right. When things don't feel right, acknowledge that, understand that, okay, listen to that voice. In the book of Philippians, Paul says, I press towards the mark for the prize of the high calling. What he means by this in the book of Philippians, Paul is talking about the higher mind, the higher calling, the higher mind. We start becoming more aware. Okay, when we start becoming aware, we start going inside. Our higher mind is taking over. When we're outside, when we're in dreams, that's the lower mind. That's the lower self. Okay, that's the body, the flesh. That within you is not soiled by the thoughts of the lower mind. It is the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is the higher mind. Okay, that's why in the Bible it calls the Garden of Eden. There was no talking snake. Okay, Adam, Adam, is actually atom, Atom, and the rib that was taken from atom is an electron. When you need to create a spirit, or we need to create energy, you take an electron from the atom, not Adam. So there was no rib taken from Adam in order to create Eve. The Bible talks a lot about like hidden meanings and symbolism. So that's what that was. Okay. So um, where there are no thoughts of the human mind in the higher mind, there is perfection, which is why I'm talking about this. The higher mind, that place inside of us, that's where everything is perfect. That's why I say you and I, we are perfect on the inside. On the outside, no. But when we're outside, we're dreaming. When we're inside, we're awakened. And if anything, you be otherwise minded. Source shall reveal this to you. So if anything, you be otherwise minded, meaning the higher mind. Sorry, anything that you be otherwise minded, meaning outside, okay? Anything that we're talking about or thinking about outside, source shall reveal this to you, meaning whatever it is we think about on the outside, that talk about that dual mirror, when we're worrying about what's on the outside, source or our the subconscious mind will reveal that to us. This is why we'll start to see circumstances that take place that trigger us, because that's the subconscious mind revealing that to us. So I want to go back to the book Letting Go by Dr. Hawkins. Okay, everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I want to say this again. Everything can be taken from you or I, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. That's from Viktor Frankl. For those of you who may not know Viktor Frankl was a prisoner in the concentration camps back in World War II. And what he was referring to, I believe, there was that when he was in the concentration camps, they were served, their meals were just warm water with a dead fish head floating. And a lot of times he said there would be dead bugs or even live bugs still alive, flies swimming around. So he said the last of that freedoms they could take from him was the freedom of his human mind. So what he did was he found beauty in the fish head floating in the water, the flies, dead or alive, still floating around. He found, because he said they're not going to take this from me. And there's a great book to read called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So another part in the book here is every life experience, no matter how tragic, contains a hidden lesson. So this is why in my previous videos I talked about in everything, anything just pops up, we extract from it something positive. We always look for the positive in every situation. If you do this, if you make this a rule in your life, no matter what takes place, I'm going to try to find the positive in this, your life is going to start to change very dramatically. Maybe not all at once, but you'll start noticing changes taking place. Keeping an attitude of, in every moment, we quiet our mind when we can, and we just say, everything in my life works out for me. Affirmations, everything in my life works out for me. My life is perfect. I am perfect. You keep this, okay? Especially in situations where maybe in the past we were a little fearful and nervous or what have you, especially those times. Or we find ourselves maybe in traffic, we're starting to feel the energy build up that used to be there from in our past. We just quiet our mind and say, everything is perfect, and I'm going to find the positive in this situation. There is an inborn drive in the unconscious toward wholeness, completeness, and realization of the self. And that the unconscious will devise the ways and means of bringing this about, even if they are traumatic to the conscious mind. Let me read that again. There is an inborn drive in the unconscious toward wholeness, completeness, and realization of the self, and that the unconscious will devise the ways and means of bringing this about, even if they are traumatic to the conscious mind, to the lower self. The unconscious, the higher self, will do this. Carl Jung also said that in this unconscious, there was an aspect of ourselves called the shadow. The shadow is all the repressed thoughts, feelings, and concepts about ourselves that we do not want to face. Okay? All the stuff that we thought they were guilty of is equal in ourselves. Which is why I go back with talking about my mother-in-law. And you can just think about that person or people in your life that you find they drive you crazy. Remember, we look for the positive. So what is it about their behavior that reminds maybe me of myself? What about them? Because they're, again, the outside world just reflects back to us like a mirror what's going on in our own mind. We're just basically, we're like the director giving them the parts in the play out in our own play. Okay? That's what we're talking about here in the book, Letting Go. Carl Jung talking about the shadow. So, 19th century philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson talked about, and I'm going to sort of transition now to being a nonconformist. To flourish, we must be a nonconformist. If we just think as others think and do as others do, we limit our potential and place our health and our sickness at the mercy of social forces beyond our control. So that's why myself, I ended up being diagnosed with cancer because of that. Conforming, just kind of going along. What's the saying? Is this go along to get along, right? We don't. The soul does not want to do that. Jesus, when he walked this earth, did not want to do that. He did not do it. Okay? So if you follow the life of Jesus, you're going to find out that he was a nonconformist. This is how we become authentic, that true who we are. We listen to that small voice inside that comes out. That's who we are at our core. We allow that to come out. We start to melt away the addictions, not just drugs and alcohol or what have you, but the addictions of fear, the addictions to guilt, the addictions to anger, all of that. We start to let that go, have that help that, and get help doing this if you need to, but have that start to melt away, okay? So I want to go back to the book, Letting Go. I have a few more quotes here I want to share with you guys. Now, as far as the nonconformity, right? Dr. Hawkins says this: we may not be conscious of our inner greatness. We may not be experiencing it, but it is there. Again, the mighty oak that is inside the acorn. If we let go of our resistance to it, we can begin to experience it. Depression and apathy, that's huge. Apathy is huge, guys. Therefore, result from the willingness to hang on to the small self and its belief systems, plus the resistance to our higher self, which consists of all the opposites of the negative feelings. So, all the opposites of that. Okay? One of the blocks to becoming acquainted with the fears in one's own mind is the fear of the opinions of others. This is how right? We talk about, we just think about as others think and do as others do. We limit our potential and place our health and our sickness at the mercy of the social forces beyond our control. Ralph Waldo Emerson. So, the opinions of others, the wanting of their approval goes on inside of our minds in a constant fantasy. We identify with the opinions of others, including authority figures, and coalesce this in such a way that we hear it as our own opinions of ourselves. Okay? Carl Jung referred to this as the collective unconscious. And in this book, and he talks about here, a good and very illuminating exercise is to sit down and look at the feelings that is directly opposite the negative one that we are experiencing and begin to let go, resisting it. So that's what I'm talking about, bringing out the positive, okay? But most importantly, guys, of utmost importance is to take time, and maybe multiple times a day, each day, to quiet the mind, to become centered, to quiet and just get quiet with your mind and allow the thoughts to come up. And really just sort of practice this. Maybe it's 2 or 3 minutes a day, and eventually you can work up to 5 minutes a day, then 10, 20 minutes a day. Okay, probably not more than 20 minutes, but maybe you do it a couple of times a day, and we just be quiet and we listen to the thoughts, and then we start to see ourselves as who it is we want to be. We start to see ourselves all acting authentically, not disrespectfully, but we're standing up for ourselves. Okay, we are not people pleasing anymore. We're pleasing ourselves. Okay, we're not a victim anymore. We're no longer, because a lot of times anger is much more than just, a lot of times the anger is really somebody who's hurt on the inside. But we also start to recognize and see other people, and we start to see inside of them. The more we grow, the more we understand who we are. We can almost see, we start to see more and more inside of the people that are around us. We start to notice that. We start to understand that we're all connected in this universe. Nobody is separate. We are not separate. So we start to love ourselves, and we start to love each other and love those around us. But we really start to advocate for ourselves, and that's huge. When you start advocating for yourself, standing up for yourself, your confidence will start to build. And again, all those addictions and things of that nature are going to start to melt away. The anger, the frustration, the hurt, the guilt. Like I've talked about in previous videos, the wake, everything that's behind us stays behind us. We decouple the emotional attachment to that. We understand that we had to go through that. And the reason for that is, well, we did, and we're here. But that is in the past. We let go of that. We start to see the people in our life who are maybe our biggest adversaries. And not only do we understand as our biggest teachers, but we start to notice them as the wounded children that they really are. We start to see inside of them, okay, whereas we understand inside of us is this giant oak. They have that as well. But really, also inside of them that we are relinquishing is still that inner child that is acting up. And that's really what's taking place. So this is the message I have for you guys tonight, is when we start to look inside, we start to grow, we start to allow this inner oak, if you will, this inner child, this inner greatness to come out. And we start to let the inner child go. We start to release from that. Release that child. Let that child go. That child is part of the wake. So that's the message tonight, guys. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you for viewing this channel, commenting down below any challenges you may have had, any successes you may have, anything you've been watching my videos and started to notice things changing in your life. Please feel free to share those thoughts down there and those wins that you have had. As well, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get all of my videos. Until I talk to you guys again, God bless you and have a wonderful evening.